Let's move on. Opposition Leader Peter Dutton has pledged to ditch Labor's 2030 climate target in exchange for a focus on nuclear power and net zero by 2050 if he wins the next election. Under the Paris Agreement, Australia is meant to cut emissions by 43% of the 2005 levels by 2030. But the coalition argue, and I think it's pretty obvious to everyone, that goal is unachievable. Now, some have been claiming that this would have us kicked out of the Paris Accord, as though that was somehow a bad thing. But Nationals leader David Littleproud disagrees.
That's totally false to think that by us not meeting our 2030 target would see us kicked out of it. We are committed to our 2050 target. In fact, at the latest COP meeting in the UAE, most countries will fall short of their 2030 target. So what we've said is, let's be honest. Let's look Australians in the eye and say, not even this government's going to make their 2030 target because they can't get to 82% renewables by 2030. There's not the supply chain to do it.
I mean, what is the point, Joe, of continuing with the 2030 target when we all know it ain't gonna happen?
Well, I suppose the point is David Littleproud seems to be talking at odds even with himself. You have countries that aren't going to meet the targets. Plenty of countries are. I mean, not meeting climate targets is a national pastime for every single country that signs up to them.
That's because they're not.
It's like ignoring UN conventions on human rights. But that's different to actually junking the target and saying, well, we're not even going to try anymore. So that is the difference. So it's not saying, well, we're not going to meet the target is one thing. The question is, are you even going to try? And again, it's a pretty weird thing to be doing because even if the coalition wins the next election next year, which it can't, forming minority government, it almost certainly cannot win. The numbers just don't allow it. So that would mean that it would be hoping to get in what, 2028 at the earliest, and then have, 2 years to suddenly meet this target? I mean, it doesn't matter what the coalition says about this. It's just structurally not in a place to be able to meet the target or not.
Well, sure, but but the opposition's got to take a stand on it. They can't just sit there on their we're not going to win the next election.
There are plenty of things the opposition simply says nothing on. I think the fact that it has come out and quite clearly said we are going to junk this target when it didn't need to say anything at all shows that Dutton is positioning himself very, very firmly away from all the climate stuff. I think he's shown that he's given up on the Teal seats. Yet again, as I had said at the time, this shows that the Teals have actually simply pushed the Liberal Party to the right on climate. And why would they go anywhere else? Because they can't get those seats back. No. And so they might as well just say, well, we're not even going to pretend to care about it anymore. We're just going to go after bread and butter issues out in the suburbs and the region. So well done, Teals. You've managed to get the 2030 Paris Agreement target jumped.
And the point, of course, Natalia, is that, the average person in and out a suburban seat is looking at their power bill every time it comes in and can see very clearly that the concept of renewable power being the cheapest form of power available is a lie. It's not evident in their power bills. They haven't got the $275 that the PM and others promised ad nauseum. What Dutton is doing here is saying, well, no, we need to take a stand and do something to try and arrest what is clearly out of control. I don't think that's a loser for him in any way, shape or form.
Oh no, absolutely. Dutton showed leadership, and not just showed leadership, but she showed much needed leadership in the Liberal Party. And because what's going on in the Liberal Party, there's lots of the so-called Labour light people that's plucked of this whole party, and Dutton had the courage to step up and separate himself from these clones of Labour Party and the Liberal Party, and was courageous enough to say, no, we're saying no to Paris. And Paris indeed is a poison. The energy bill will go through the roof like no tomorrow.
It already has. Wow. But I mean, you are involved in the Labor Party, the Liberal Party. The fight in Victoria, I should note. So it's a slightly different kettle of fish. What is the fight like within the party between those wets and those dries when it comes to stuff like this? Because, I mean, the Liberal Party in Victoria is stuffed. And it's stuff like this that they really need to start driving home if they ever want to form government again, particularly on a state level down there.
Oh, yeah, the fractionalisation within the party, especially in Victoria, within the Liberal Party, is through the roof. It's not tomorrow. We cannot win anything if we're not one. We're fighting inside the party, and that's absolutely inappropriate. And what's Dutton done? It's a light at the end of the tunnel. So he took on leadership for a change.
I'm glad to see him actually doing it, Paul, because, I mean, plenty of us have said this for ages, that just cast all this aside, and he's actually had the guts to do it.
Look, I'm not going to go full each-way elbow on you, but hear me out. I think that clearly Peter Dutton has seen the advantage of drawing a great contrast with what he considers to be, or what is considered to be, the only opinion that possibly is out there. Remember,
Yes.
60-40. Yes, when he comes out and says no, and it ends up getting 60-40 when it comes to the voice. The 3D chess of this is a bet that Trump becomes the president at the end of this year, which would mean that the United States would also take a sizable step back from a series of commitments under the Biden regime. I say that just for the censors that are watching it. But the flip side is, of the 10 seats that get him halfway to getting near 60s, let alone 70s, which of those seats flip? Now, I understand that the National Party is very clear, dump, dump, dump. They're trying to say we're focused on 2050, not 2030. But there are a lot of seats like, say, Higgins, which currently may or may not exist, seats like Boothby, there's a lot of Bennelong, there's a lot of seats in the next 10 that they need to win from Labor that I'm not entirely sure are all in on burn the Paris Agreement. I hate the Paris Agreement because it says China is a developing country when China has apparently landed on the moon recently. They are not a developing country and they don't even have to start measuring things till 2030. So I completely agree that it is a flawed document, but I think we should be honest about potentially flawed politics that comes out of this. People hate power bills, but then equally as Joe and I know, because we've fought about this for how long, which is polling will tell you, I want action on climate change.
That's right.
Are you willing to pay for it? No. Well, as soon as you pick one of those, the other one starts to gain in strength because you ignored it. So I'm just saying, it's not as clean cut as it sounds.
Look, there's a lot of focus right now in this discussion about what are the politics about this announcement, but also it's about energy stability and having energy security, because
and his solution, by the way, is nuclear. He does have a solution to emissions on the table. That's what
exactly. And I mean, okay, it's going to take longer, but so many countries have embraced or are starting to embrace nuclear as an answer to the climate problem. So you don't have to be a climate skeptic or a climate change skeptic to see that this could be a long-term solution. Yes, it's expensive. We hear the arguments. Yes, it will take longer to get there. But if we're looking at the long-term future for a reliable source of energy, clean
100%.
energy, then this could be the answer.